All right, let's talk about your homework here. My mouse is like very shaky. All right, this was the DNS homework. And I was very impressed that no one made the stub zones. Like, I think it's because I stressed really bad of how to make it. Because it never fails. Somebody always does. But none of you did. I was like, wow. So, for the most part, I'm pretty sure everybody got pretty much 100% on the DNS. Is that correct? If I remember right. Okay. So that was a little bit easier. Now, the DHCP is where there was an issue. Now, the DHCP homework is right here. All right. I was lenient on the number, but first of all, you had to have 2 scopes. Okay? One scope should have been based on your network. In other words, 10.10.92 or 93 or whatever. Some of you didn't even do that. Again, I don't know who did what, because as you know, I suck on names. And you're supposed to make it for 200 numbers. And since it was your scope and you were the primary, you were supposed to have, it's actually 80 and 20 is the percentage it's supposed to be. Did I tell you 80 and 20, or did I tell you 75 and 25? Okay. So I didn't take off for that. Okay? As long as you had a group and another group, I was fine with that. But it was supposed to be 80 and 20. It's just that it wasn't in this book, and I haven't done it in a while. So as long as you had majority of them for your scope and a small amount for my scope, you got full credit for that. Okay. Some of you configured the whole 200, then put an exception in, which is fine. Some of you just made a scope that was only 160 numbers long, which is fine as well. Okay. The biggest issue, let me bring up my machine here, and I'm going to show you. Let me pause this while I get my machine up. All right, we're going to continue here. Okay, so I'm going to bring up Server Manager. I'm going to go into DHCP. Okay. Now, inside of DHCP, you are to have 2 scopes. Okay. I think I only have one on mine. Okay. The biggest issue I had, when I go to this scope, I'm going to look at the properties of it, was this duration. Okay. I tell you, bring the assignment back up. The assignment says, set the lease duration to a time period when the client would abandon its number and cause the DHCP server to no longer available. The lease should release at 315 minutes. Okay. Yes.
I took that as to mean the secondary.
Actually, we're supposed to do both of them.
That's what I thought too. I'd only do it for the second.
Okay. Well, no one had 6 hours. I don't think. Did you have 6 hours?
I didn't have 6 hours.
Right.
But I was just,
Yeah, I kind of did it if you had one or the other, but somebody had like 10 hours and someone had unlimited. It's like, okay, but either way, okay. Either way, if it's going to release at 315 minutes, which is 5 hours and 15 minutes. Remember we talked about how it keeps trying to renew, then after a while it just gives up and gets another one? We did talk about that. It's in the recording. I even went and made sure. So what it is, if you set the lease to 6 hours, at 50% time it goes to renew, which would be 3 hours, and it keeps trying to renew up until 5 hours and 15 minutes, and then it gives up and goes out and gets another one. So what you needed to do is set the lease duration to 6 hours. Everybody got that? You're going to do it again on the test. You got that? Yes? No? Maybe? Okay. So, yeah, what the lease is, I think, I don't know why they do it that way. You would think a 6-hour lease, you get to keep it for an entire 6 hours, but you don't. At 3 hours, which is 50% point, you have to renew the lease. And if no one answers, you keep it until 75% or 87, whatever time. It's 5 hours and 15 minutes, whatever percentage that is. That's when it finally gives up and gets a new number. So you never actually get to the 6 hour point. You never do. Okay. That's the one most people had problems with. Now, on the test, you'll be doing the exact same thing, plus you'll also be setting some options. Remember we talked about these scope options. I didn't require you to do it on the homework, so make sure you know how to do those. Do y'all remember how to do those? You go in here, configure options, add whatever you feel like. Say I want to add a swap server. No. Just call it whatever you want. I mean, whatever option I tell you, now you have a swap server. So it's pretty simple to add options. Scope options pertain to the specific scope. Server options pertain to all scopes. Okay? Everybody got that? DNS, I did not require you to make pointer records. You only remember what a pointer record was? It's the reverse. That's the number to the name instead of the name to the number. You're going to have to do that on the test as well. So make sure you know how to do that. Okay? So what we're going to do next week, I'm going to... Not next week. Week after that, I'm going to go over the entire test with you, make sure you understand what you need to do. We're not going to do it, though. You're going to do it on your own. That's what you're going to have to do. Sounds like a plan? Yes, no, maybe? So if it's confusing on the thing, make sure you yell at me, hey, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay? All right. This next chapter, I just got the slides for. For some reason, I got it twice. I don't know why. But, okay, this next chapter... It's not it. It's the last one. Alright. Is right here. Is group policy processing. Okay. I want you to go. Actually, I don't know. Let me see if he's got it blocked out. Hold on. I don't know if we'll be able to do this. Don't do this yet. I'm going to see if it's here. Come on. There it is. Yeah. Come on. Okay. Let's, I want you to look at something first on the local machine. I'm going to show you how I got here. Make sure the recorder is going. It is. Okay. In your machine, you might be able to get through it through control panel. This is not in your server. This is on your actual machine. Yeah, okay. If you go to control panel, you'll click on the little start button and go to control panel. This is on your machine, not the server. Control panel, then administrative tools, then you should see local security policy. Okay? Is control panel hidden on y'all's machines?
Yeah.
Okay, if it's hidden, I'll show you how to get there. If it's hidden, just click on the start button and type in MMC. MMC. And you'll bring up this console. Yeah, we had a discussion today on why all this crap's blocked in here. We need to be able to do all this stuff in here. Alright, bring up this console. You should type MMC, which stands for Microsoft Management Console. Then we're going to click on File, and we're going to add a snap-in. File, then add remove snap-in. Then on the left side, I want you to find Group Policy Object. Okay? Click on Group Policy Object, then click Add, then it'll say Local Computer, and just say Finish, and then OK. And you should end up with this. Okay? Everybody with me? Now this is on your machine, not the server. Okay? Let's look at a few things we can do in here. We have user configuration and also computer settings. Okay? Let's go under computer settings. Which is, I'm sorry, computer configuration. And I want to look at, oh, did he hide some of that stuff? Yeah, he hid some of it. Well, hold on, I'm trying to find something here. Yeah, they changed it a little. Let me find it. That's not it. It's your login scripts. Software settings. Hold on a second. Alright. All right, yeah, it took me a minute to find it. It was under, inside here, under computer configuration, Windows settings, security settings. That's what I was looking for. Okay, it's the same thing as you see at the top here. That's the local security settings window. Now, inside of security settings, we can do things like set a password policy. Okay. All right, and hopefully you guys have at least seen this before. Should have talked about it in some classes, but this is where you can set stuff like the maximum age, the minimum age, so on and so forth. Okay. But the problem is, okay, what if I want to do this on every machine in this room? It's going to take some time. I'm going to have to go to every single machine in this room and set this. So if I got one or two machines, not a problem. But we have 200 and some machines, on, actually more than that, in this building alone. Can you imagine setting that on every machine in this building? That would suck. So what you could do, you can actually save changes, but I'm going to show you a much easier way to do it. Okay. Now again, this is on the local machine. A benefit of Active Directory is we can do stuff through group policy. Okay. In other words, we can have a centralized management. So I'm just going to minimize that so it's out of the way. Now inside your machine, if you bring up your machine, okay, everybody here in your server now, since we're running Active Directory, and if I go up to Tools, I can go down to Group Policy Management. Okay. Everybody find that? Here, our clock's off by an hour. Nice. All right. So, everybody with me here? Everybody found Group Policy Management? Should come up looking like this. It should say Group Policy Management. Should have your forest and then stuff below that. You know, I didn't do attendance real quick. Let me fix that. Let me go back and do attendance real quick. Hold on. Okay, so everybody find Group Policy Management? No. Did not find it yet? Okay, let me come see what you got on your screen here. All right. If you bring up Group Policy Management, inside there you can see your forest. Remember when we installed our server, we talked about forests, domains, okay? Now under the domain, you should actually see your domain. It should be rows, whatever. Everybody find that? Okay. Now under there, you should see default domain policy. Then you should see, did you guys create any OUs? Okay, so you have students. Under students, I have BIT and I have math. Correct? All right. Now, so let me go look over a couple of slides here. What they talk about here, okay, they are defined what's called the group policy object. Okay, they're a collection of configuration. You can think of a group policy like a filter. When you log on, let me bring my other screen up so you can see it. So when I logged on, what? Oh, still paused? No, it's recording. Oh, I didn't change the screen's frozen. Sorry about that. Okay, so my bad. All right, so when you log on, what happens is it applies anything linked at the domain level, like the default domain policy here. Then it keeps going down. It'll apply anything linked at the student level, at the BIT level. You can, each one of them is like a filter. They recommend not having more than 10 because it just takes a long time to apply all these filters. And the more filters you have, but what they're good for is like maybe Rose State wants something that pertains to the entire campus. Maybe a warning when you first log on to the computer. So we could put that up there at the default domain policy. We could put some pop-up that says, welcome to Rose State, blah, 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 okay? Then maybe under students, we want another policy at the student level that says, you know, where we can put a daily message. Hey, check your email or some stupid thing like that. And then under BIT, we could put a policy that pertains just to this building. So we could actually have multiple ones. But the point is you don't want to have too many because it applies one after another, after another, and after another. Okay? So that's kind of what they're talking about here. Okay? It says to assign it, we're going to see how that does it in a second. A scope is where it's defined at. If a policy is defined at the domain level, it pertains to the entire domain. All OUs and below it. Let's sneeze again, jeez. Okay? If something's defined down here at the BIT level, that pertains to BIT only. It won't affect the math people. Okay? Everybody see that? Hopefully? Okay. Alright, and precedence, we're actually going to see how that works here in a second. And yeah, we already kind of talked about that. It's the local policy site domain and OU. See, the local group policy is something stored locally on your machine. But there's a problem with that. For instance, if I go in my office and I make a local setting on my machine, normally the domain policy overwrites it. But if you had one that wasn't overwritten, then the local would pertain. Okay. Then it goes site, because site can have multiple domains, then no domain, and then OU. Okay. They inherit from each other. Okay. There's two by default. There's a domain policy and a domain controller policy. And if I was to look in here, you should all have a default domain policy. Do y'all have that? Okay. Now, if you get down under domain controllers, you should have a default domain controller policy. You should have that as well. Okay, I'm going to click to stop showing me this stupid message. Okay. So those are the two that are there by default. Okay. We can add more, which I added one. We're going to do that here in a minute on yours. Okay. So those are the two. So default domain policy links to the domain. It affects all users and computers in the entire domain. So if I make a change there, it affects everybody. Could be passwords, accounts, Kerberos, lockout, everything. Okay. Domain controller is how the domain controllers are managed. It pertains to all domain controllers. Okay. User rights type stuff. Okay. Now, in here, what they're talking about inheritance is, like on this picture, so we have the Contoso domain at the top. We have the default domain policy, then two other group policy objects, and then we have GPO for sales, 1 and 2, then we have the West GPO. So if I'm in the West group, I'm going to get the default domain policy, plus these two other GPOs. I'm going to get the sales stuff, and then I'm also going to get the West stuff. So you can see it's multiple settings. Okay. All right. Oh. Okay. There we are. All right. And you can also change precedence by clicking on them, moving them up and down. Maybe I want this one to go first, this one to go second, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now I'm going to show you how to make one. Okay. So go over to your students area here, and I want you to right-hand click and say create a GPO in this domain and link it here. Okay. And I'm going to call it student GPO. Okay. So now you should have a policy in there called student GPO. You'll see it's linked at the student GPO, at the student OU, I'm sorry. Now I also created one inside the BIT. You can right click in there and create one if you like as well. You can have multiple of them. Okay. Now, since you have a couple, let's go up and look at the default domain policy first. Okay. I want to click on the default domain policy, then with my right hand button click and say edit. Okay. So under default domain policy, I right hand clicked and said edit. Okay. Okay, and I gotta find where they have it in here. Okay, and there's 8,000 things in here. Okay, let's just talk about a few things that are in here, okay? So I'm in the default domain policy. I'm assuming you are with me. Okay, starting at the top, we have the computer configuration, then user configuration. Under computer, they have something called software settings under policies. Now, what's cool about this, you can actually install software through here. You can actually install and remove software through here. So I could go in this area, I can make a new package, and I can install a new software package right through group policy, which is kind of nice. And, you know, it just works great. I used to do it when I took care of networks downtown, because it used to suck going out to machines, especially when they had to update something. As long as it was installed through here, you can edit it and remove it through here. So it was great. I can remove their old software, install their new software next time they log on. But one thing you got to be careful about doing that, Sometimes it'll prompt users to answer questions, and they don't know the right answers. And sometimes they'll. Yeah, I had an issue with the Chapel Supply. They sold pressure washers and stuff. Had an issue with them for a while. They weren't getting updates, and I had it set to automatically update. Well, what was happening was each time when they, basically log in the morning, it says, "Hey, you want to apply these updates?" And they would say no. You ever seen those things? You want to reboot now to apply these updates? Some of you have probably seen that. They kept saying no. It's like my stepdaughter's got a machine at home. I gave it to her 2 weeks ago. Still hasn't put Yosemite on there yet. It's a Mac. I'm like, why haven't you put it on? Every day she keeps saying, "Remind me later." It's crazy. It's like, why do you keep doing that? And even worse story than that. That same company, Chapel Supply, there was a really super sweet lady that was like 110 years old. Her name was Berta. She used to store everything on her desktop, put up in the corner. She would literally have a pile of icons up in the corner. And she would, whenever she needed a program, she would remove them all one by one off that pile to get the one she wanted. Those are the programs. And her documents she stored in the trash. She goes, because they're out of the way. I says, but what happens if, because it always pops up, you want to empty your trash today? She always say no. I'm like, what happens the day you accidentally say yes? I don't. I'm like, that's very daring to store stuff in the trash can. But she did for a very long time. And so software installation's great, but sometimes if the software, you can actually ignore a lot of the prompts. You can tell it to ignore them, but sometimes it's going to ask them a question, and most users hit no or cancel or whatever the hell. So here's where software installation is. Okay, under Windows settings, we have name resolution type stuff, which there's nothing configured in here, but you can enter some DNS information. You can do just basic stuff. I've never configured this, but you could. Okay. You could, how your machine does stuff. Now the scripts is this next section, which is kind of cool. If you click on scripts, and I always go to standard. I don't know why they have that stupid extended view, but you have a startup and a shutdown script. I'm gonna look at the startup script. Okay, so what I did is I clicked on scripts, and I'm in startup. I'm going to go to properties of it. Inside here, you can add things. You can tell it to run this script on startup, and every time they start the machine, it does it. Like here at Rose, we have a script that automatically maps printers. Drives me crazy. Every time I log on, it maps a printer. It's like, why? Every time. It's just, for the longest time, we used to have a RSC screen print utility to make screenshots. I'm like, seriously? The ability to make screenshots is called the print screen button. But they had that utility for years and years until Brad Johnson finally got a job over there. I said, Brad, will you please remove this? They says, yeah, but one person in this other building uses it. One person, the physical plant uses this, they installed it on the entire domain. It was stupid. But it's gone now, luckily. But you could add start scripts, you could add shutdown scripts, you can add PowerShell scripts, you can add all kinds of scripts. Scripts are normally stuff that you want to happen at startup, like map a printer, map a network share, do that kind of, set the time, which is very critical. And it was funny because I guess about 2 years ago, Virginia, my wife, she works at the help desk on Tinker. She was doing something on the network. And believe it or not, they're still running the startup script that I wrote when I was working in the networking shop in 2000. Actually, in 1995. Because she sent me a screenshot. I'm like, what the hell is that? It was literally, the script is something like KDewey script or something it's called. And she's like, it's still here. They're still using it. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. But one thing I would always do is set the time. Because I mentioned early on in this class how time is very critical. If your time is off by more than 5 minutes, you really have to start having some serious computer issues. So what I always do in my script, first thing I do is set the clock. So why would that be a good thing to do when you first turn the computer on? What will that solve? Anybody know? Solve dead CMOS batteries. Because you get computers where batteries go dead and the date resets to 1970. So the first thing I do every time is I reset the clock. It solves so many issues. But you also forget about the batteries that way, and you don't realize you get a dead battery because you always resetting the stupid clock. But, so we had that. You can also do shutdown scripts. This will be executed when someone shuts down a computer. But again, you got to watch it. You know, some people don't ever shut the machine down like me. Or some people, when they hit the shutdown button, they hit the power button too. So if you hit the power button, there's nothing, it's not going to work. Okay, so let's go on down to security settings. Security settings is the big one. Okay, that's where, now if you remember that local policy we had a little while ago, I brought mine back up on the screen here. Remember, this was the local one on the local machine where we saw the password information and we saw password policy. Well, the same thing is right inside a group policy. Okay? So under password policy, we got enforced password history. 24 passwords. What do you think? Is that good or bad? History of 24 passwords. I think it's a little excessive. Because that's an awful lot. Okay. Maximum password age, 42 days. Okay. I think that's too short. It needs to be at least 90 or 120. Because what happens when you require someone to change your password so darn frequently? They write the shit down because they can't remember it because they're always changing them. Okay. Minimum password age, 1 day. The whole point of that minimum password age, if you set it to remember 24 passwords and have a minimum password age of 0, someone could literally change their passwords 24 times in 1 minute. Change it, go back to the original one. So you want a minimum age in there as well. There's the length, 789. Complexity, that's the whole uppercase, lowercase, special character number. They explain what it is in here. If you double clicked on it, you could go to explain and see. It says you can't contain part of the username and so on and so forth. So all these are explained real well. Okay, store passwords using reversible encryption. What that means is if that's enabled, their password can be decrypted. Is that a good thing? Probably not. But there is some software. I actually used a piece of software years ago that required the user password to be decrypted. So I had to enable it. Probably not the best security setting in the world, but they required it. Okay. So the big difference between this screen here, the one we did on the local machine, is that pertains to the local machine. In the group policy, when I do it here, I do it one time and it pertains to the entire domain, which is kind of nice. Okay? All right. Then we have account lockout policy. All right. This actually was funny because Scott locked his out the other day. And then Kristen Wolf, she teaches economics. Really excellent teacher. She comes in her classroom every day. She goes like, "Good morning, class." And they all have to say, "Good morning, Mrs. Wolf." And if they don't say it loud enough, she goes, "I said good morning, class." Because she teaches rep office. But she's an excellent teacher. But she was getting evaluated. She's only been here like 2 years. So each year, she has to be evaluated. Well, it was the dean and another professor were evaluating her. And she was nervous. And she tried to log on the machine. Whoops, screwed up my password. Whoops, screwed up my password a second time. Whoops, screwed it up a third time. What it was, the caps lock was on. And this whole account lockout duration thing, let me explain how this works. Okay, account lockout threshold. 0 is a bad option. 3 is a good one. So if I was to set this at 3, okay, what that means is, all right, okay, well, how many times before it locks me out? Okay, 3 is about average. What that means is if you get it wrong 3 times in a certain time period, it locks you out. And the time period here is 30 minutes. See that? Normally that's set at 5. Well, actually, in 15. I'm sorry. All right. So, right? We got to do. No, I'm sorry. I said that wrong. Reset after 5 minutes. I'm trying to show you what we have it set here as. And lockout duration is 15 minutes. So let me explain what that means. So if you get your password wrong 3 times, within 5 minutes, it locks you out for 15 minutes. See how that works? So, how do we solve that? Well, if you get your password wrong 2 times, wait 5 minutes, because then it resets it. So try 2 more times, then wait 5 minutes, because it never fails. Whenever I change my password, I always get it wrong the first couple times. Just don't get it wrong 3 times in 5 minutes. Just do it 2 times in 5 minutes, and you're okay. But a good thing is, Rose State does reset theirs after 15 minutes. A lot of places leave this set at 0. That's how Tinker's is. It's set at 0, which means you lock it out, guess what? It's locked out forever. So which one do you think is better? Have it auto unlock or have it never unlock?
Depends on the use case.
Okay, I'm at Rose State. Auto unlock or never unlock? I would say, okay, I work at the NSA. Probably never unlock.
Never, ever. Can you actually set that to a negative?
Lock it out even before you attempt it. No. Point is, the duration really depends on, like you guys said, the use. What are you using it for? If you're in a very secure environment and someone screws it up, yeah, you want to know why. Hey, you know, we got Sam over there, did it wrong 3 times. Is it Sam or is it Edward Snowden trying to break in? We don't know. You know, so that's why. But again, the nice thing about group policy is we can edit it here and it pertains to the entire domain. I make a change here, within 15 minutes the entire domain is affected, which is nice. Okay? All right, Kerberos. Okay? That's more having to do with tickets and stuff like that. The way Kerberos works is you really get a ticket. When you log on to the network, they give you a ticket. Then whenever you try to access a resource on the network, they check your ticket. That's pretty much what it is. They're saying how long is your ticket good for, how often does it need to be refreshed, the lifetime is 600 minutes, and so on and so forth. There's that whole 5-minute thing I was telling you about, the whole clock thing. Okay. So it's kind of important that you don't screw this stuff up. Okay. All right, now, so that's a common policy. Let's look at local policies. Okay, we can have an audit policy. So what are we auditing by default in here? Anybody? Not a darn thing. Is that good or bad?
Brilliant. Since I'm managing the network, brilliant.
Yes. Okay, let's explain what auditing is. Auditing is keeping track of stuff. For instance, logon events. Let's double click on the logon events. All right. So I want to define a setting. Now, if I want to audit logon, should I audit success, failure, or both? Failure, yeah. I want to know when someone's trying to get on to Sam's password over there. Because the odds are no one's going to break into it. But if someone's trying to break into it, hey, if I go in there, I got a lot of failures on Sam. Either Sam's an idiot or someone's trying to break into Sam's account. Okay. Now, they say if you audit everything available on a SQL server, they said the log is like, 500 megs a minute or something like that, the audit files alone. So in other words, don't audit everything. They also say on networks, you're not supposed to, like on top secret networks, you're never supposed to wipe out the audit logs. Just keep them forever. Export them, keep a copy of them. It was funny because when I kind of told you how I kind of got forced into the networking shop at Tinker, and they wanted to know how long the servers have been running. Well, Linux has something called uptime. You all might have heard about that if you had a Linux class. You can actually see how long your Linux server has been running. It's called uptime. Windows does not have that. Well, they wanted to know. They're like, Ken, how long has this server been running? I'm like, well, there's no real way to tell. The only real way to tell is an event log number 605 and 609 that are generated upon a reboot. So if you figure it's been rebooted, obviously the server was down for a period of time. So they're like, how can you figure that? So I went, okay, all we got to do is go and look up at the 605s and 609s. We know the machine rebooted. So I went into the event logs. They were blank. I'm like, where's the logs? I'm like, oh, we just delete them every morning because they kept getting full. I'm like, wow. So they were literally just deleting them every morning because they were getting full. That's not a good plan. But so I said, no, I can't tell you how long this machine's been running because it's been deleted every morning. Stupid. All right. So auditing, very handy, but watch what you audit. When I used to accept credit cards, we actually had a credit card theft at my location. It was a piece of software that had a SQL injection attack. What a SQL injection attack is, like with SQL, you could do things like, search for username equals Ken Dewey. Okay, that would be a SQL search. Well, the software we're using didn't check to make sure that the query was correct. So someone inside of a search box for a product, so basically they would put in the product name. So it's like, for product name equals XYZ. But inside the product name, they said equal XYZ or 1 equals 1. So basically, if the product name equals this or 1 equals 1, which is always going to be true. And then they appended to that to create a new account with administrator access. They did user add, and they just basically added an account. It was a bad deal. But got some credit card numbers, and we had to do an audit of our system. And I just thought this was so funny. No one could do this. But they were saying that the firewall CPU utilization has to be monitored every 15 seconds. Is that doable? No, I didn't. Now, I did have software that kept track of it, but I mean, is it really being monitored, actively monitored every 15 seconds? That's crazy. Who could do that? It's kind of like at your house. You go to bed at night and lock your front door. But do you go there every 15 seconds to make sure the front door's locked?
I could make my room in time before the next one.
I mean, it was like, holy crap, it was...
Sometimes after scary movies, yes, I do that.
Yes. But so my point is, with auditing, you can audit a lot of stuff. You can audit event access. And another funny story, again, I was forced into the networking shop by the commander and the captain in charge. No one liked me there. But they were funny, like, oh, you're so smart, help us figure this out. Well, they came to me one time, like, okay, we can't figure this one out. I'm like, okay, this is Sergeant so-and-so got kicked out of the military, he was doing something bad. And he says, he keeps editing the commander's calendar. I didn't tell you this story yet, did I? Okay.
No.
But he kept editing the commander's calendar. I'm like, no, he's not. Well, yes, he is. So they come running in and went, he's in the calendar right now. Said, what? So yeah, he's literally editing the commander's calendar right now. We're going to call the cops because he got kicked out of the military. I'm like, okay, whoa, slow down. What's going on? So they go in there and they bring up what they had done is they turn on auditing for the calendar. And sure enough, the calendar was open for editing and someone saved an entry to it. So I said, okay, so how do you know it was this guy? Well, it says right there, Sergeant Smith edited. Well, it was using the computer description. On your computer, let me show you your computer right here. If I go to computer properties right here, then if I go to change name, down here you got a computer name right here, but you got a computer description. So if I say Ken's computer, well, we'll just say Ken Dewey. His was like Sergeant Smith, whatever. But that description has nothing to do with the computer name. Well, what they had done was, when that guy got kicked out of the Air Force, his computer was new, so they gave it to the commander. So they changed the computer name, but they didn't change the computer description. So every time the commander went to edit his calendar, it says Sergeant Smith was editing the calendar, because it uses the computer description, not the name. It was like... So I said, how do you know he's doing it? It says right there, Sergeant Smith just edited the calendar. I'm like, no, it doesn't. I says, that's the computer description. That's not the computer name. Like, oh. So he went to the commander's office and says, look, right there. Commander's computer is called Sergeant Smith. And I'm like, oh, that's stupid. I said, yeah, it was the commander editing his own calendar.
You're so smart. Why don't you stop Commander Smith from getting into your edit?
It was funny. The commander he didn't do it, but something got deleted out of the calendar. He missed a very important meeting. And they found it got deleted by this Sergeant Smith. So that's why this whole investigation got started. Because the commander would never delete something that was important. Well, it turns out the commander did it because it was done in his machine with his log on. It's crazy. But the point is, with auditing, you can audit very granular when a file was opened, when a file was saved, when a file was not saved, when an attempt to save a file was made. You can change all kinds of stuff, but you just need to be careful because it creates these huge logs that no one will ever look at. Okay, are you trying to do something on my screen or something?
No.
You keep staring at it, and you logged into my machine, so I think you're
I
doing
am.
something. All right, so let's look at the next thing down.
I just set up PF since maybe
Alright.
we have external access to this.
I don't want that. Okay, now, the next one's user rights. If you look in here, there's all kinds of stuff in here. And I always think this one's funny. Change the system time. What's that mean? You can change the time. And you really need to stop allowing people to do that. Because I mentioned the other day how the travel agent kept changing the time and was causing your certificates to screw up. So there's certain things that you wouldn't think are important, but initially it's not defined. But you could define that. Hey, don't let him do that. All right. How about this deny logon locally? Okay. What does logon locally mean? Anybody? What do you think? That means I'm logging on right here. I got the keyboard, mouse, I'm logging into the machine. So you can either log in locally or log in via the network. Okay? So if I am say I'm configuring the settings for the domain controllers. Okay? Should I let Caleb over there log in to the domain controllers? Caleb's a normal user. No, he doesn't need access to it. So I would add the normal users to the denied login locally. Because they don't need to log in domain controllers, that kind of stuff. So there's lots of rights you can set in here. Okay. Log on as a service. There's just tons of them. Okay. Shut down the system's another big one that William, for some reason, decided to enable and have the machine in my office, the forensics machine. The normal user account can't shut it off. You need to turn that off, Roy. It drives me bananas.
No.
So I log in as user,
To annoy you.
and I go to shut down. Oh, you don't have permission to shut this machine off. I'm like, seriously? But you can very easily prevent people from. Now, obviously, if it's a server, you don't want it to be shut off. But it's just, okay. So there's some of the different rights. There's tons of them. And we talked about Schema Master a little bit last time. And after you all left, remember we were trying to find it and we couldn't find the setting for it? The reason is it's not done very much. So Microsoft does not register the required DLL to do it. So you have to manually register the DLL before you can do it. But one of the things they do with schemas is update this kind of stuff. They're always adding new information into group policy. Okay. All right. Security options. Tons and tons more stuff here. Okay. You can see there's just tons of them. Okay. Then we go into event log. And where is... Okay. Maximum log size. Actually, it was the Windows... There. Yeah. Okay. No, it was the application log. I forget which one was a Tinker, but here's you can actually set the maximum size of an event log. You need to be careful with event logs. Like, you know what the default setting is for a network printer? To log every print job. Every time you send a job to a network printer, the print server gets an entry in the event log. Isn't that stupid? So that's the default setting to audit that. So you really need to... And what happens is when the logs get full, you can either send them to overwrite themselves or they just stop growing and then they stop working. So it causes the machines to crash. So there's a lot of stuff in there you can mess with. Okay, we're not going to go through every other option, but can you agree there's like hundreds of millions of different things in here? Because if you open all these up, they got lists after list after list. And, well, yeah, naturally the ones I click on have nothing. But there is tons of stuff in some of these areas. Now, I want to go down to the user settings. We looked at the computer settings. Let's look at some of the user settings now. Okay. I'm under user configuration. And let's look at desktop. Okay. So I'm under user configuration, administrative templates, desktop. Okay. Now inside here you can do things like you can prohibit someone from manually redirecting profiles. You can remove the My Documents icon from the desktop. You can do all kinds of crap to it. And if I click on the subfolder of desktop, you can enable Active Directory. You can even, and there it is. Here's a good one. Do you ever have someone who keeps changing the darn wallpaper every 5 minutes, like Roy? If you if you enable allow only bitmap wallpaper, guess what happens? They can't use JPEGs or GIFs anymore. So it stops a lot of the crappy backgrounds people use. So you can, it's kind of fun. You can enable all kinds of stuff in there. Yeah, you just turn it on.
Or the backgrounds that people are going to use are going to be bitmaps, so they're going to be huge.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't realize that. They're like, make it my background. It can't. It doesn't work. But so there's a lot of settings you can do in there. You can also do the network setting. Actually, let's go to, where's a good one? There's just tons of them. There's so many freaking things in here. I can't even think of any good ones to show you. But I used to put certain stuff on mine. I forget what it was. There we go. We can remove, change password, and all that kind of stuff. So there's just lots of stuff. There you go. You can even remove log off. So people can't log off their machines. Okay. Do not process script. So there's lots of different things you can do that are in there. So the point of all this is inside of group policy. So you can see how people can make changes to group policy and it'll be darn right impossible to find because there's a million settings. But this is so handy. So I'm going to close out the group policy editor. Okay. Now, I'm still on default domain policy. Now I want to click on settings. All right. Oh, did I not? Okay, I did. Okay. So I'm on default domain policy. Now on the right hand side, I clicked on settings. It should have came up generate report. Now, if you look at mine, I don't know if you did anything to yours, but under my security settings, you will see that I changed my password policies. I went in and this is what's being enforced for password policies. So you can see what's being done. Okay? You can see, all the settings. It's just that there's a lot. You can tell them show all, and you can see all kinds of stuff. Now, it's only showing the stuff that's been configured. If it hasn't been configured, it's not showing. Now, there's something they don't get into in this chapter, and we're not going to either. But there's a way you can apply a template. In other words, a pre-configured policy. Like they have a general workstation template, domain controller template, high security workstation template. Well, what do you think the high security workstation template does?
A lot of really strict settings.
Exactly, a lot of really strict stuff. And when I took my class, I asked HR, what happens if I apply this? He goes, don't. I'm like, come on. What happens if I do? He goes, well, it's going to make a machine, so it's going to be very restrictive. Well, I wanted to see what the heck it did. So I applied it at lunch, in case I could screw it up. The problem is, so you see all these settings we got in here, okay? So like we have this enforced passwords of 24 passwords. See that right there? So if I was to go into that setting and not configure it, in other words, remove the configuration from it, every machine that's already logged on has that 24 saved in the registry. Okay? So even though, now that I'm not configuring it, it's not going to remove it. You understand? Because the policies are filters. And if the policy doesn't have a configuration, it doesn't change the local machine. But if it was previously configured, it's stored on the local machines. So what sucked was, so I applied the high security workstation. And then so I was very restricted, so I went in and applied the basic normal workstation. Well, the problem was all those settings of the high security were not configured anymore, but it didn't remove them. So it was kind of on my machine for good, so I had to reinstall it at lunchtime. So it was kind of sucky. But the point is, be careful what you put in here. Okay. So what I should have done was I should have, like go in there and change this to 10 or something before. Don't just not configure it, because it would have left it in the machine if someone had logged on. Okay, so kind of cool. You can see the settings that pertain to it. You can also set the security of it. Okay, down here, I can add. So this is for all authenticated users. I could also go in and change it for. We'll just say. I could add it for domain admins. I could add it for whoever I wanted. I could make this policy for a specific user or for a specific group. Maybe I want it only for, students. I don't know, just some stupid thing. But you can add special settings. And the locations. Where is it used? Now, is this policy enforced? No. But what I could do is I could right here click it and say enforced. Now, see, you make a policy, but until you enforce it, it doesn't do a darn thing. So now that I right-clicked and did enforced, it's now going to, whoever logs onto my domain will have to meet these new rules, or I can unenforce it. Okay, easy enough there. Now that was all the default domain policy. I can do the same thing down here at the student policy. I could go in and edit this, and you'll see it's exactly the same, because we were under, where's it at? Was it Windows settings? Yeah, there's the security settings, then the policies and all that stuff. So, it's the same thing as each. See, there's the password policy and all that. So, you can set certain things at the domain level, certain things at an OU level, certain things below that. So you can have multiple of these. And if you had multiple, like if I go up to, where can I see it? I'm trying to show you all of them. I don't know how I can see multiples. Might not be able to. I don't think I can. Okay. But if you had multiple, they would have an arrow so you can move it up and down so you could have which one's higher priority. But I don't have more than one added. All right. Actually, maybe. There it is. Okay. So I can see. So I should be able to move you down. Come on. No, there should be a way to move it down. Why didn't it let me move it down? Precedence. There should be a way to change this stupid thing. I don't know how to change it. Well, you should be able to change it. I just don't know how to change it at the moment. I don't want to mess with it all night. But you kind of understand how all these work, how they're kind of like filters you can. So if I was to ask you to add a GPO, group policy object, and assign it to a specific organizational unit and set something very basic like set passwords to 10 days. Y'all can figure out how to do that? Yeah, because if you want to add one to the math group, you just say create a new GPO. We're going to call it math GPO. There it is. I have it now. I can very easily edit it. And I can go in and set the policy. So it's not hard. Okay. But the point is, I just want you to know where it is, know how to make basic settings, and then you can enforce it. Okay? I see math's enforced. All right, let's see. They talk about a lot of this stuff in here, which we've kind of mentioned most of it. Yeah. Oh, and here's one thing we didn't talk about. Inheritance and enforced. Okay? What that means is you can, if something is inherited, say we have something at the domain level. It's inherited down to students. Then that's, so when I look at my domain here, so this default domain policy is inherited by students. Then that's inherited by BIT and so on and so forth. But this GPO1 is not inherited by math students because it's at the same level. Okay? So you can change the inheritance of that. Okay? And it's right, there's the order of them right there. Okay? So I don't know if I can do it on this one. Let's see. Oh, I don't think you can change those. I'm trying to find, well, I know you can. Why can't I see it? Edit, there's the policy. But, all right, but you can change, you can make them so they're inherited. I just can't remember exactly where the darn checkbox is. Hold on. Come on, show me where it's at. GPO, yeah. Yeah, they flow down. Show me where it's at. Right there, block inheritance. So why can't I see it? Does anyone see? Oh, there it is. Does right there. Okay. Okay. What block inheritance does? So say I have this student GPO, which is at the student level. Okay. If I went down to BIT, I could say block inheritance, which means that student GPO would not fall down into me. Okay. Would not get inherited down. I could very easily just do that. Block inheritance. Okay. Easy enough there. All right.
You still get the default domain policies and everything? The higher up policies?
Yes. You just wouldn't get the lower ones. Right.
Okay.
So it's not going to inherit. Right. Okay. Let's see. Enforce policies. Yeah, the higher ones get enforced. And there's the enforce button, which I showed you that already. And, you know, you'll notice on the pictures here, actually I think this other picture is better. Let's see if I can find it. Where'd they go? See how they have a bunch of different ones right here? Okay. You could actually have multiple. You could have one called password policy, one called software installation policy, one called whatever the heck you want policy. Because you saw there was a lot of settings in there. And if you had everything configured in one, it would be very hard to manage. So a lot of times you can have more. Just don't put too many levels because it's like a filter. It's going to be one after another after another. Kind of thinking like adding t-shirts. You ever seen those contests where people try to put on the most t-shirts? Oh, it's crazy. It's kind of the same thing. If you have too many filters or too many policies, it's going to take forever for people to log in. Okay? All right, so we talked about that. I think we're getting near the end of this. Okay, enforcing it. We already talked about enforcing it. Okay. And we can also say this, the grouping, where you could go into the ACL, where you could go into your policy, like this policy right here, and I could go in and apply it to a specific user. You know, this only pertains to whoever, you know, whatever I want there. Okay. Okay, and there's the user listings. And you can also filter them out, and we're not going to do the rest because we don't have the ability to do it. And it's, yeah, we don't have the ability to do that. But just, I think we covered enough of this. But you got the general idea of how they work, how you make group policy, how they can be applied to different OUs, how they can be enforced, now you can have different settings. So it's just tough. It's like here, you know, William put some weird. What was some of the ones William did that we had the biggest issue getting rid of? It was like couldn't add an instructor or something. I forget what it was. It was something. I would add an instructor, but they didn't have the ability to add a student, and I couldn't find. It was some weird setting, and I think the admin machine to make it so only certain people could log into that. Is that right? It's tough sometimes. It was. You can make it so only specific users can log in. Then to figure out, see, if you have multiple policies, like here we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 policies, and come on, default domain policy, the naming sucks. Okay. So, you know, it's hard to figure out which policy is affecting what. So, not the best idea there. Okay? All right. I think that's about it. I'm not going to do the rest. They're going to talk about the resulting, but we can't. See, they have the resulting policy wizard. What that does is it queries the computer and returns the policies, kind of like that show area I showed you. The only problem is we have to have it running on another machine to query it, which we don't have running. But at least you got the general idea of how it works. Okay? All right, we're just about out of time anyway, so I'm going to stop this for now. Remember, next week, no school. The week after that, I'm explaining the final exams project. You'll have 1 week to do it, so make sure you're here. All right.